My wife attended a Christmas party with her romantic interest, leaving our 3 kids unattended at home. In response, I publicly shamed her for her actions at the event. Subsequently, this led to our divorce. In the heart of a quaint suburban neighborhood, adorned with twinkling Christmas lights and the fresh scent of pine, the home of Charlotte and William stood as a testament to a seemingly idyllic life. Inside, the warmth of a crackling fireplace contrasted the chill of the winter night, and the laughter of 3 children echoed through the halls, crafting a picture of domestic bliss. William, a tall man with a kind smile that rarely reached his eyes these days, was in the living room, struggling to untangle a knot of Christmas lights. The task was mundane, but his mind was elsewhere, trapped in a turmoil of emotions ever since he had stumbled upon a truth that threatened to unravel the fabric of their family. Charlotte, with her chestnut hair cascading down her shoulders, was busy in the kitchen, her hands deftly rolling out dough for gingerbread cookies. Her movements were mechanical, her thoughts distant, clouded with a secret she harbored close to her heart. Theirs had once been a love story told with pride. College sweethearts turned life partners, Charlotte and William had built a life filled with shared dreams and aspirations. But, as years passed, the mundane realities of life and the pressures of raising a family had slowly chipped away at the foundations of their marriage. It was 2 weeks before Christmas when William's world had come crashing down. A forgotten phone, a buzzing message, and a moment of curiosity had revealed the unimaginable: Charlotte, his Charlotte, was having an affair. The message, a simple, "Can't wait for the Christmas party" face blowing a kiss, from a contact named Dave, was like a dagger to his heart. At first, there was disbelief, a desperate hope that there was a misunderstanding. But as he delved deeper, sifting through more messages, the painful truth became undeniable. Charlotte was planning to attend her company's Christmas party with this man, her lover, leaving William and their children behind under the guise of work obligations. William had confronted Charlotte that night, his voice barely a whisper, his heart heavy with grief. Charlotte's confession, amidst tears and apologies, only served to deepen the wound. She spoke of loneliness, of feeling unappreciated and lost, but her words fell on deaf ears. William was consumed by a sense of betrayal. In the following days, Charlotte tried to reach out, to bridge the chasm that had opened between them, but William was distant, his hurt manifesting as cold indifference. He played the role of a doting father, masking his pain from their children, but the joy of the season eluded him. As the Christmas party approached, a plan began to form in William's mind, a confrontation. Not in the privacy of their home, but there, at the party, where her facade of a loyal wife would crumble for all to see. The day before the party, William's resolve solidified. He would go to the party uninvited, confront Charlotte and her lover in front of her colleagues, expose her infidelity for the world to see. In his mind, it was justice, a fitting response to the betrayal that had shattered his trust. Charlotte, oblivious to William's intentions, continued her preparations for the party, unaware that the festive evening she anticipated would soon turn into a stage for her public humiliation. That night, as the children slept and the house lay quiet, William sat alone, staring into the fire, the flames reflecting the turmoil within. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the course of their lives forever. The day dawned crisp and clear, the sun casting a gentle glow over the frosted landscape. Inside the household of Charlotte and William, the air was thick with unspoken words and the weight of impending decisions. It was the eve of the company's Christmas party, an event that was supposed to be a celebration but now loomed over them like a harbinger of doom. Charlotte moved through the day with a sense of detached automation. She was keenly aware of the growing distance between her and William since her confession. The guilt of her actions weighed heavily on her, yet a part of her yearned for the excitement and acknowledgement she found in her lover's company. Despite the turmoil, she clung to the hope that the party would provide a temporary escape from the cold reality of her marital home. Meanwhile, William was engulfed in a storm of conflicting emotions. The night before, he had confided in his oldest friend, Michael, about his plan to confront Charlotte at the party. Michael had been aghast, cautioning William against such a public spectacle. "Think of the kids," think of the consequences, he had pleaded. But William's hurt and anger were a tide too strong to be held back by reason. As the day progressed, William grappled with his thoughts, his mind replaying the years of their marriage, searching for missed signs and unheeded warnings. He remembered the laughter, the shared dreams, the way Charlotte's eyes lit up the first time they saw their new home. These memories now seemed like fragments of a different life, overshadowed by the looming betrayal. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, the couple's 3 children remained blissfully unaware, their excitement for the upcoming Christmas holidays a stark contrast to the tension that gripped their parents. They chattered about Santa and presents, their innocence a poignant reminder of what was at stake. As evening approached, Charlotte began to ready herself for the party. She chose her dress carefully, a stunning red number that she knew would turn heads. She applied her makeup with precision, each brushstroke an attempt to mask the turmoil inside. Her heart was a tangle of guilt and defiance, a part of her wishing to confess everything to the children, to seek their forgiveness. William, on the other hand, spent the evening in solitude, his plans for the night crystallizing with every passing moment. He had decided not to accompany Charlotte, citing a sudden workload. But as Charlotte left, offering a tentative goodbye, William's heart hardened. Tonight, he would expose her deceit, and with it, end the charade of their happy family. After Charlotte's departure, William sat alone, the silence of the house amplifying the chaos of his thoughts. He pictured the party, the music, the laughter, and amidst it all, Charlotte with her lover. The image fueled his resolve. He left shortly after, driving through the quiet streets, the festive lights of the neighborhood a stark contrast to the darkness within him. As he neared the venue, his hands tightened around the steering wheel, his mind a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and a desperate longing for the past. The stage was set for a confrontation that would leave indelible scars, a public spectacle that would unravel the carefully woven tapestry of their lives. Tonight, the truth would come to light, and with it, the inevitable fallout of a love betrayed. The Christmas party was in full swing when William arrived. The venue, a lavish hotel ballroom, sparkled with festive decorations. Strains of classic carols mixed with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, creating an atmosphere of celebration that felt jarringly out of place to him. William stood at the entrance for a moment, surveying the scene. His eyes quickly found Charlotte, radiant in her red dress, laughing at something her companion said. Beside her was the man from the messages, his arm casually draped over her shoulder. The sight ignited a fire in William's chest, a burning mix of anger and heartache. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the fray. He moved through the crowd, unnoticed at first, his gaze never leaving Charlotte. His presence at the party was unexpected, and he could sense the ripple of surprise as people began to recognize him. Charlotte, engrossed in her conversation, hadn't yet seen him. William watched her, a part of him aching to remember her as she was before, to find some remnant of the woman he had fallen in love with. But that image was shattered by the reality before him. He approached, his steps measured, his heart pounding. As he neared, Charlotte finally saw him. Her smile faltered, her eyes widening in shock and confusion. "William, what?" she began, but he cut her off. "Hello, Charlotte. Enjoying the party?" His voice was steady, but it carried an edge that made her flinch. The man beside her, sensing the tension, introduced himself. "I'm Dave. You must be Charlotte's husband." William nodded curtly, his eyes never leaving Charlotte's. The room seemed to have quieted, their exchange drawing the attention of those nearby. "Dave," William said, his voice louder now, carrying across the room. "I'm glad I could finally meet the man who's been seeing my wife." The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Charlotte's face drained of color, her eyes darting around the room, landing on the faces of her colleagues, her friends, all now witnesses to her private shame. Dave stepped back, his expression one of disbelief and embarrassment. "Charlotte, you said you were separated," he stammered, his discomfort palpable. William's gaze remained fixed on Charlotte. Tell him, Charlotte. Tell him how you left our children at home to be here with him. Tell him about us. Charlotte was speechless, her lips trembling. The room was eerily silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry," her voice barely audible. Dave, looking betrayed and disgusted, shook his head and quickly exited the ballroom, leaving Charlotte standing alone amidst the sea of stunned faces. William's heart, though heavy with sorrow, felt a bitter sense of satisfaction. He had exposed her infidelity, publicly shamed her as he had intended. But the victory was hollow. Looking at Charlotte, the mother of his children, now a figure of pity and scorn, he felt no triumph, only a profound sense of loss. The silence was eventually broken as people began to murmur and disperse, giving the couple a wide berth. William, his purpose fulfilled, turned to leave, the image of Charlotte's stricken face etched into his memory. As he walked away, the sounds of the party resumed, a stark reminder of how quickly the world moves on, indifferent to the personal tragedies unfolding within it. The night air was cold as he stepped outside, the festive lights of the city blurring into a haze of color as he contemplated the shattered remnants of his family. The morning after the Christmas party dawned bleak and gray, mirroring the desolation that hung heavy in Charlotte's heart. She sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her, her mind replaying the events of the previous night over and over. The humiliation, the hurt in William's eyes, Dave's look of betrayal, it all swirled in her head like a relentless storm. Across town, William sat in his car, parked outside a local park, a place that held memories of family picnics and laughter. Now, those memories felt like echoes from another life. He had achieved what he set out to do, expose Charlotte's betrayal, but the taste of revenge was bitter. The satisfaction he had imagined was instead replaced by a hollow emptiness. Back at home, Charlotte's mind was a tangle of regret and fear. The way her colleagues had looked at her, the whispers she had heard as she'd fled the party, they were seared into her memory. But more than that, it was the realization of what she had lost that cut the deepest. She had betrayed not just her husband, but her family, her children. The children. They were at her mother's house, where she had left them for the night. The thought of facing them, of trying to explain why their father wasn't with her, was overwhelming. But she knew she couldn't avoid it forever. She had to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, William's thoughts were with the children too. He knew they would be full of questions, and he grappled with how to explain the complexities of adult relationships and betrayals to them. How could he make them understand something he himself was struggling to comprehend? As the day wore on, Charlotte returned home to gather her thoughts before going to pick up the children. The house felt empty, a stark reminder of the rift that had grown between her and William. She went to their bedroom, now just hers, and looked at the photo by the bed, a snapshot of a happier time. With a heavy heart, she picked up her keys and left. William, after hours of sitting alone with his thoughts, finally made his way home. The house was quiet, a stark contrast to the usual noise and bustle of family life. He wandered through the rooms, each corner a reminder of a life that now felt irrevocably altered. Evening approached, and Charlotte returned with the children. Their innocent chatter and laughter were a balm to her aching heart, but also a piercing reminder of the joy she had jeopardized. She prepared dinner, a simple affair, the children's voices filling the kitchen. But the empty chair at the table was a silent testament to the absence of their father. William, upstairs in his room, heard the sounds of his family below. He wanted to join them, to wrap his arms around his children and forget everything else. But he couldn't. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too raw. The night passed with an unspoken heaviness. Charlotte put the children to bed, each goodnight kiss a reminder of the stability she had shattered. Downstairs, she sat in the dark, the silence enveloping her. William, alone in his room, stared out the window into the night. The decisions that lay ahead were daunting: how to navigate this new reality, how to co-parent, how to rebuild from the ruins of their marriage. That night, as the house lay quiet, two hearts grappled with the fallout of a love lost, each lost in their own world of regret and uncertainty, each facing a future that was suddenly unclear. In the days that followed the Christmas party, the house that once echoed with warmth and laughter was now steeped in a profound silence, broken only by the occasional sounds of the children. Charlotte and William, now living in the same space but worlds apart, moved through their days like ghosts, haunted by the remnants of a life they once cherished. Charlotte spent her days in introspection, the magnitude of her actions weighing heavily on her. The look of betrayal and hurt in William's eyes that night at the party replayed in her mind incessantly. She had hoped that her affair would fill the void she felt in her marriage, but now she realized it only deepened it. Guilt-ridden, she understood the pain she had caused not just to William, but to their entire family. William, on the other hand, grappled with a maelstrom of emotions. His initial sense of vindication had quickly evaporated, replaced by a profound sadness. The public confrontation, though momentarily satisfying, had not brought him the peace he sought. Instead, it left him questioning whether the price paid, the disruption of their family unit and the hurt caused to their children, was worth it. As Christmas approached, the festive decorations around the house served as a stark reminder of the joyous times they used to share as a family. The children, sensitive to the tension between their parents, tried in their own ways to inject some cheer into the somber atmosphere. One evening, Charlotte attempted to initiate a conversation with William. She expressed her remorse, her understanding of the pain she had caused, and her willingness to accept whatever decision he made about their future. William listened quietly, his expression unreadable. He acknowledged her apology but was noncommittal about their future. The next day, William took a long walk, the cold winter air clearing his mind. He reflected on the years he had spent with Charlotte, the good times and the challenges. He thought about their children and the impact this situation had on them. He realized that while his love for Charlotte had been deeply wounded, his responsibility as a father remained unchanged. On Christmas Eve, with the children excited about Santa's impending visit, Charlotte and William sat down together for a heart-to-heart conversation. It was a difficult discussion, filled with honesty and vulnerability. They spoke about their feelings, their failures, and their fears. By the end of the conversation, it was clear that while their romantic relationship might be over, their partnership as parents was not. They agreed to separate amicably, focusing on co-parenting their children and ensuring they grew up in a loving, stable environment. Christmas Day dawned with a bittersweet feeling. The family opened presents together, the children's laughter a soothing balm to their parents' aching hearts. Charlotte and William put aside their differences for the day, determined to give their children a joyful Christmas. As the day wound down, Charlotte and William watched their children play with their new toys, a sense of peace settling over them. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, but they also knew that their love for their children would guide them through it. That night, as the children slept and the house lay quiet, Charlotte and William shared a moment of understanding. They had come full circle, from love to betrayal to a newfound respect and friendship. It was the end of their marriage, but the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one where they would navigate the complexities of life separately, yet always united by the bond of their family. My child expressed a desire to meet new daddy. Compelled, I engaged a private detective, and was shocked to discover my wife's infidelity. The investigator then unearthed her most guarded secret. She will eternally remember the vengeance I exacted. In the quaint suburb of Willowridge, the home of Zephyr Hartley and his wife, Marigold, echoed the semblance of a picture-perfect life. Their daughter, Juniper, a sprightly 6-year-old with an imagination as wild as her curly hair, was the apple of their eye. Zephyr, a software engineer, and Marigold, a freelance graphic designer, had built a life that many envied, a beautiful home, successful careers, and a family bonded by love. But beneath the veneer of this idyllic existence, Zephyr sensed a disturbing change. Marigold had grown distant, her once bright eyes now often clouded with secrecy. She was frequently lost in her phone, smiling at texts that she hurriedly swiped away whenever Zephyr entered the room. He tried to dismiss these signs as mere figments of his overactive imagination. After all, they were still a family, weren't they? One evening, as Zephyr tucked Juniper into bed, she murmured sleepily, "When can I see the new daddy again?" Her innocent words struck Zephyr like a bolt of lightning. "What new daddy, Junie?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "The one mommy meets at the park," she replied, drifting off to sleep, unaware of the storm she had just ignited in her father's heart. That night, Zephyr lay beside Marigold, who was sound asleep, her breathing a soft rhythm in the quiet room. His mind raced with a tumult of emotions, confusion, hurt, disbelief. Was Marigold seeing someone else? Who was this new daddy Juniper mentioned? Questions swirled in his mind, each more unsettling than the last. The next day, Zephyr took a personal day off work. He drove aimlessly around Willowridge, his mind a whirlpool of thoughts. He needed answers but didn't know where to start. That's when the idea struck him, a private investigator. It seemed like a drastic step, but his need for the truth outweighed his reservations. He found an investigator named Boone Cassidy through a quick online search. Boone, a former police detective, had a reputation for being discreet and effective. Zephyr arranged to meet him at a secluded coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Boone was a grizzled man with piercing blue eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Zephyr explained his situation, his voice tinged with a mix of shame and desperation. Boone listened intently, nodding occasionally, scribbling notes in a weathered notebook. "Mr. Hartley, I'll do what I can to uncover the truth," Boone said, his voice as gravelly as his appearance. "But you need to prepare yourself. The truth isn't always what we hope it to be." Zephyr nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He handed Boone a photo of Marigold and a retainer fee. As Boone slipped the photo and the money into his jacket, Zephyr felt a strange sense of finality, as if he had just set in motion a series of events that could change his life forever. Driving back home, Zephyr felt a cascade of emotions, fear, anticipation, and a simmering anger. He thought of Juniper, her words echoing in his mind. He thought of Marigold, the woman he thought he knew. The road ahead seemed clouded with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: he was about to step into a world of revelations that could shatter his once tranquil existence. Weeks had trickled by since Zephyr Hartley's fateful meeting with Boone Cassidy, each day stretching taut with tension and unspoken questions. The once harmonious rhythm of the Hartley household had faltered, replaced by a stifling silence that hung heavy in the air. Zephyr watched Marigold with a veiled gaze, searching for clues in her every gesture, every smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Meanwhile, Juniper remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between her parents, her laughter a stark contrast to the growing unease that enveloped the home. Then, on a crisp Tuesday morning, as autumn leaves danced in the breeze, Zephyr received a call from Boone. "We need to talk," the investigator's gruff voice crackled over the line. "Meet me at the Oakwood Diner in an hour." Zephyr's heart pounded as he sat across from Boone in a dimly lit corner of the diner. The investigator's face was stoic, but his eyes betrayed a hint of sympathy. Boone slid a manila envelope across the table. "What you're looking for is in there," he said. With trembling hands, Zephyr opened the envelope. Inside were photographs and a detailed report. The photos showed Marigold with another man, laughing, holding hands, their intimacy unmistakable. Zephyr's eyes traced the contours of the man's face, suave, confident, a stark contrast to Zephyr's own understated demeanor. He was someone Zephyr recognized, Castor Reed, a successful entrepreneur renowned in Willowridge for his business acumen and charismatic presence. As Zephyr absorbed the contents of the report, Boone's voice seemed to fade into the background. The investigator detailed how Marigold and Castor had been meeting secretly for months, their rendezvous carefully planned and executed with precision. Boone's words were factual, devoid of emotion, yet each sentence pierced Zephyr's heart like a shard of ice. "Do you know him?" Boone asked, noticing Zephyr's recognition of Castor. Zephyr nodded, his voice a mere whisper. He's someone I've always looked up to. Respected. The irony of the situation was not lost on him. His idol, the very epitome of success and charisma, was the one tearing his family apart. And there's more, Boone continued, his tone hesitant. Your wife, she's been helping Reed with some, let's say, not-so-legal business ventures. Money laundering, to be precise. The revelation hit Zephyr like a tidal wave, leaving him reeling. Marigold's betrayal was one thing, but her involvement in criminal activities was beyond his wildest imaginings. The woman he married, the mother of his child, was a stranger to him now. Zephyr left the diner with a heavy heart, the envelope's contents burning a hole in his mind. The drive home was a blur, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. He realized he had to confront Marigold, yet the prospect filled him with an indescribable dread. That evening, as Marigold prepared dinner, Zephyr sat her down. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled as he placed the photographs on the table. Marigold, we need to talk, he began, his eyes searching hers for an iota of the love they once shared. The kitchen, once a haven of warmth and laughter, turned into an arena of truth and confrontation, as Zephyr braced himself for the inevitable storm that was about to break. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the walls of the Hartley home seemed to close in, heavy with the weight of unsaid words and shattered trust. Marigold's confession, amidst tears and pleas for forgiveness, did little to quell the tempest in Zephyr's heart. She spoke of loneliness, of feeling overshadowed by Zephyr's career, of finding solace in Castor's charismatic embrace. But her involvement in his shady dealings, that was a line crossed too far. Zephyr moved to the guest room, each night a battle with haunting images of Marigold and Castor, their laughter echoing in his mind, their secrets casting long shadows over his thoughts. In this labyrinth of betrayal, Zephyr found an unlikely confidant in Marigold's best friend, Lysandra. She had always been a constant in their lives, her vibrant energy in sharp wit a contrast to Marigold's more reserved nature. Lysandra reached out to Zephyr, her concern genuine, her words a balm to his wounded soul. They began meeting in secret, initially under the guise of shared pain and mutual support. Lysandra confessed her own disillusionment with Marigold, who had grown distant from her as well. Their conversations, filled with shared memories and laughter, became the only respite for Zephyr in a life that had turned upside down. One evening, as they sat in the secluded corner of a dimly lit cafe, Lysandra's hand brushed against Zephyr's. The touch, accidental yet electric, sparked an idea in Zephyr's mind, a plan of revenge. If Marigold could betray me so easily, Zephyr mused aloud, perhaps it's time she feels a taste of her own medicine. Lysandra's eyes widened, understanding dawning. You mean? Yes, Zephyr nodded. An affair. With you. Let her feel the pain of betrayal. Lysandra hesitated, the morality of the plan tugging at her conscience. But the hurt of being abandoned by her best friend, combined with the growing attraction toward Zephyr, tipped the scales. All right, she whispered. Let's do it. Their affair began as a carefully orchestrated play, each meeting, each touch, a deliberate act designed to inflict the maximum pain when eventually discovered. They left subtle clues, a lipstick mark on Zephyr's collar, a faint perfume scent, text messages deliberately left open. Yet, as their deception deepened, so did their connection. Their conversations grew more intimate, their chemistry undeniable. The lines between revenge and reality began to blur. Zephyr found himself torn between the exhilarating thrill of this new relationship and the lingering shadow of his marriage. Meanwhile, Marigold, lost in her own web of lies and regret, remained oblivious to the growing bond between her husband and her best friend. She attempted to bridge the growing distance, but Zephyr's heart had hardened, his eyes now only for Lysandra. As their secret affair blossomed, Zephyr began to question his motives. Was this truly about revenge, or had he unwittingly found solace in the arms of another? The complexity of his emotions left him adrift, caught between the past he could not return to and a future he had not planned for. The crisp air of Willowridge had begun to carry the chill of impending winter, mirroring the coldness that had settled in Zephyr Hartley's heart. His affair with Lysandra, initially a means of retribution, had transformed into a whirlwind of forbidden passion. Their meetings, once calculated performances, had evolved into genuine moments of connection and vulnerability. Zephyr found in Lysandra a kindred spirit, someone who listened to his deepest fears and offered solace without judgment. Their conversations often lasted into the early hours of the morning, a blend of laughter and earnest discussions about life, love, and the complexities of human emotions. Yet, despite the growing intensity of their relationship, the shadow of its inception, revenge, lingered. Zephyr couldn't shake off the guilt of using Lysandra as a pawn in his vengeful game against Marigold, even as his feelings for her deepened. Meanwhile, Marigold had started to sense the shift in Zephyr. His distant demeanor, the occasional slip-up in conversation, the unexplained absences, all pointed towards something amiss. She began to watch him closely, her suspicion a silent specter in their already strained relationship. One evening, as Zephyr returned home from a rendezvous with Lysandra, he found Marigold waiting for him in the living room, her eyes red-rimmed and weary. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zephyr, caught off guard, mumbled something about a late work meeting. But the lie felt hollow, even to his own ears. Marigold's gaze didn't waver. "Zephyr, are you seeing someone else?" The directness of the question took Zephyr by surprise. He stood there, silent, the truth burning on his tongue but unable to break free. The moment stretched on, heavy with unspoken confessions. Finally, Zephyr muttered a denial and retreated to the guest room, his mind a turmoil of guilt and confusion. Lying in the darkness, he realized the toll their deception was taking. It was no longer just about him and Marigold. Lysandra, too, was caught in the crossfire of his vengeance. The following days saw Zephyr grappling with the consequences of his actions. His moments with Lysandra were tinged with a growing sense of unease. He began to question the morality of their affair, the legitimacy of their feelings amidst the web of deceit they had woven. As Zephyr and Lysandra met at their usual cafe, their conversation took a turn towards the future. "What are we doing, Lysandra?" Zephyr asked, his voice laden with conflict. "This started as revenge, but now, I don't know what this is anymore." Lysandra reached across the table, her hand gently covering his. "I know this began in pain and anger, Zephyr. But what I feel for you now, it's real." Zephyr looked into her eyes, seeing the sincerity in them. A part of him wanted to believe in the possibility of a future with Lysandra, free from the shadows of their past actions. But the other part was shackled by guilt and responsibility towards his family. In the heart of Willow Ridge, under the bare branches of winter trees, Zephyr Hartley found himself walking a path lined with deceit and inner turmoil. His affair with Lysandra, once a covert operation fueled by vengeance, had morphed into a complex tapestry of genuine affection and remorse. Each stolen moment with her was a bittersweet reminder of the duplicity that had brought them together. Zephyr's home life with Marigold had become a charade of normalcy. Conversations were strained and superficial, with both parties skirting around the unspoken truths that lay between them. Juniper, their daughter, remained the only bridge of unfeigned joy and innocence in Zephyr's fragmented world. As the days passed, Zephyr's encounters with Lysandra grew more intense, yet the shadow of their original sin, revenge, loomed large. The initial thrill of secret meetings had given way to a gnawing guilt that tugged at Zephyr's conscience. The realization that he was no longer in control of his emotions was both terrifying and liberating. One evening, in the quiet confines of Lysandra's apartment, Zephyr found himself pouring out his heart, revealing his innermost fears and doubts. "Lysandra, what we have, it's become something I never anticipated. But I'm lost in this web we've woven. I feel like I'm betraying not just Marigold but also you, in a way," Zephyr confessed, his voice a mixture of despair and earnestness. Lysandra listened, her expression a blend of understanding and sorrow. "Zephyr, I never meant for things to go this far. But I can't deny what I feel for you. It's real, and it scares me, she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. Their conversation was a cathartic release, laying bare the complexities of their relationship. But it also served as a stark reminder of the precariousness of their situation. Meanwhile, Marigold's suspicion had turned into a quiet resolve to uncover the truth. Her husband's evasive answers and unexplained absences had fueled her determination. She began her own discreet investigation, piecing together clues and half-truths. The tipping point came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while Zephyr was at work, Marigold discovered a forgotten earring under their bed, an earring that didn't belong to her. The small, glittering piece of jewelry was the missing puzzle piece she needed. Confronted with undeniable evidence, Zephyr returned home to find Marigold waiting for him, the earring clutched tightly in her hand. "Who is she, Zephyr?" "Who?" Marigold demanded, her voice a mix of anger and heartbreak. The room felt suffocating as Zephyr struggled to find the words. The truth, harsh and unyielding, finally broke free. "It's Lysandra," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. The revelation hit Marigold like a physical blow. The betrayal by her husband was one thing, but the involvement of her best friend was a betrayal of a different magnitude. "At a Christmas party, I discovered my wife's infidelity, a revelation that shocked everyone. What I did next was something no one could have anticipated." In the heart of a softly lit ballroom, amidst the jingle of Christmas carols and the merry chatter of partygoers, Thaddeus stood with a glass of red wine in his hand. The annual Christmas party of his company was in full swing, the air thick with the scent of pine and the warmth of holiday spirit. He scanned the room, his eyes seeking Zephyrine, his wife of 7 years. There she was, laughing, her green dress shimmering like the Christmas tree in the corner of the room. Thaddeus smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Zephyrine was always the life of any gathering, her laughter infectious, her energy boundless. He made his way through the crowd, intending to surprise her with a gentle kiss. But as he neared, a sight caught him off guard. Zephyrine, usually so open and radiant, seemed different, her laughter not as light, her gestures more guarded. Curious, Thaddeus paused behind a cluster of his colleagues, just out of sight. He watched as Zephyrine leaned in closer to Mark, his colleague from the marketing department. Their heads were tilted together, sharing a secret joke perhaps, but something in their body language suggested more. A pang of unease twisted in Thaddeus's stomach. Determined to dismiss his doubts, Thaddeus stepped forward. But just then, Mark whispered something in Zephyrine's ear, and she blushed, a reaction Thaddeus had thought was reserved for their intimate moments. His heart sank. The room's festive cheer, the twinkling lights, the laughter, all seemed to fade into a dull background hum. Thaddeus felt as though he was watching them through a thick pane of glass, disconnected, distant. He turned away, the taste of the wine turning bitter in his mouth. Thoughts swirled in his head, each one a stinging reminder of what he had just seen. Had he been blind to something in his own marriage? Was there a hidden layer to Zephyrine that he had never known? The questions pounded in his head with every heartbeat. Thaddeus sought refuge in a quiet corner, his mind replaying the scene over and over. He watched other couples at the party, laughing and dancing, their joy a stark contrast to the turmoil within him. He felt a stranger in a world he once knew. Eventually, Zephyrine found him, her face alight with the evening's excitement. "There you are," she exclaimed, her voice a melody that once soothed his soul. "Why are you hiding here?" Thaddeus forced a smile, masking the storm inside. "Just needed a quiet moment," he lied, the words tasting like ash. Zephyrine, seemingly oblivious to his inner turmoil, took his hand. "Come on, let's dance," she urged, pulling him towards the dance floor. As they danced, Thaddeus couldn't help but feel the distance between them, a chasm that had opened silently, unseen yet deeply felt. He held Zephyrine close, her familiar scent, the softness of her hair, but it all seemed different now. A nagging voice in his head whispered doubts, feeding his insecurities. The evening drew to a close, and they made their way home, the car ride filled with Zephirine's cheerful recounting of the party. Thaddeus responded with nods and half-smiles, his mind a whirlpool of emotions. Once they were home, as Zephirine drifted to sleep, Thaddeus lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the image of Zephirine and Mark etched in his mind. He realized then that this Christmas party had unwrapped a truth he wasn't prepared for, a reality that threatened the very foundation of his marriage. And as the clock ticked towards midnight, Thaddeus knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same again. The days following the Christmas party passed in a blur for Thaddeus. He went through the motions of daily life, his interactions with Zephirine marked by a superficial normality that masked the turmoil churning inside him. Sleep eluded him, and when it did come, it was restless and filled with unsettling dreams. Each morning, Thaddeus watched Zephirine, searching for signs, clues that might reveal more about her affair. But she remained her usual self, vibrant, affectionate, seemingly unaware of the storm she had ignited in his heart. It was this facade that made it all the more painful for Thaddeus. The trust and openness he had always believed defined their relationship now felt like a distant memory. As the days turned into a week, an idea began to take shape in Thaddeus's mind. It was a thought that initially surfaced as a fleeting shadow, dismissed as quickly as it appeared. But as the reality of his wife's betrayal settled deeper, the shadow grew, taking form and substance. If Zephirine could betray their vows so easily, why should he be the one to uphold them? The idea was simple yet daring: to have an affair of his own. Not just any affair, but one with someone close to Zephirine, someone whose involvement would ensure she felt the sting of betrayal as acutely as he did. The perfect candidate soon became apparent: Azalea, Zephirine's closest friend. Azalea, with her quick wit and warm smile, had always been a pleasant presence in their lives. But now, Thaddeus saw her in a different light, as a means to an end. The plan was set in motion with a casual invitation. Thaddeus reached out to Azalea under the guise of seeking advice on a surprise gift for Zephirine. Azalea, unsuspecting and ever helpful, agreed to meet for coffee. As Thaddeus sat across from Azalea in the quaint downtown cafe, he felt a twinge of guilt. Azalea was a kind soul, and here he was, about to use her for his vendetta. Yet, as he conversed with her, laughing at her jokes and sharing stories, he felt a strange exhilaration. It was a game of shadows and deceptions, and he was the orchestrator. Their meetings became more frequent, and with each encounter, Thaddeus carefully laid the groundwork for his plan. He was charming, attentive, gradually blurring the lines between friendly banter and flirtation. Azalea, initially cautious, began to respond to his advances. Thaddeus could sense the moment when their relationship shifted from platonic to something more. It was a point of no return. In the midst of this deceitful dance, Thaddeus often found himself pausing, questioning the morality of his actions. But the image of Zephirine and Mark at the Christmas party would flash in his mind, reigniting the ember of betrayal and hardening his resolve. As Thaddeus and Azalea's relationship deepened, he meticulously orchestrated their encounters, choosing places and times where they were likely to be seen. It was only a matter of time before word got back to Zephirine. The thrill of the affair mixed with the anticipation of Zephirine's discovery created a potent cocktail that kept Thaddeus in a constant state of heightened emotion. He knew the revelation would shatter the fragile veneer of their marriage, but he was past the point of caring about consequences. In his mind, the scales of justice needed to be balanced, and he was the one to tip them. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than Thaddeus had anticipated. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening when Zephirine confronted him. The setting sun cast long shadows in their living room, mirroring the dark turn their conversation was about to take. "Thaddeus, we need to talk," Zephirine said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a storm of emotions. He could tell she was trying to maintain composure, the way her fingers nervously twisted a strand of her hair. He sat down, bracing himself for the conversation he knew was inevitable. "What's on your mind, Zephirine?" "It's about you and Azalea." The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation and hurt. People have seen you together, Thaddeus. They're talking. Is it true? Thaddeus met her gaze, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was it, the moment of truth. Yes, it's true, he admitted, his voice a mix of defiance and resignation. The confession hit Zephyrin like a physical blow. She recoiled slightly, as if the words had manifested into something tangible. Why, Thaddeus? Why her? Why at all? He could see the pain in her eyes, a reflection of the anguish he had felt since the Christmas party. I saw you with Mark, he said, the words laced with bitterness. At the party. I know about your affair. The revelation struck Zephyrin silent. Her face drained of color, and for a moment, she seemed to shrink before him. Thaddeus, I. Her voice trailed off, unable to find the words. The room was thick with tension, each grappling with the weight of their betrayals. The silence was broken by Zephyrin's soft sobs. Thaddeus watched her, a part of him wanting to reach out and comfort her, another part angry and vindicated. As Zephyrin regained her composure, a fragile conversation ensued. They talked, not just about the affairs, but about their marriage. It was a painful dissection of years of unspoken frustrations, unmet expectations, and neglected emotions. They uncovered truths about their relationship, about how they had drifted apart, each lost in their own world. It's like we've been living a lie, Zephyrin said, her voice barely above a whisper. How did we end up here, Thaddeus? He didn't have an answer for her. The truth was complex, tangled in years of complacency and unspoken truths. They had been living side by side, yet miles apart in every way that mattered. As the conversation drew to a close, a heavy realization settled over them. Their marriage, once a source of joy and comfort, had become a facade. The love they once shared, now buried under layers of deceit and resentment. They sat in silence, the weight of their revelations hanging between them. Outside, the night had fallen, the darkness enveloping their home like a shroud. Inside, Thaddeus and Zephyrin were left to ponder the ruins of their marriage, each lost in their own thoughts, each wondering what the future held for them. In the wake of their mutual confessions, Thaddeus and Zephyrin found themselves navigating an unfamiliar terrain. Their home, once a haven of warmth and love, had transformed into a silent battleground of unspoken words and avoided glances. The air was thick with the residue of their hurt and betrayal. As days rolled into weeks, Thaddeus grappled with a myriad of emotions. The initial rush of his retaliatory affair had faded, leaving in its wake a deep sense of emptiness. Guilt gnawed at him, not just for the pain he had caused Zephyrin but also for dragging Azalea into his vengeful plot. He realized that his affair, though sparked by hurt, had been a misguided attempt to fill a void that had long existed in their marriage. Meanwhile, Zephyrin, who had always been the more vocal of the two, retreated into a shell. The revelation of her affair, coupled with the shock of Thaddeus's response, had left her introspective and quiet. She moved through the days like a ghost, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by the shadow of their crumbling relationship. In a mutual, unspoken agreement, they began attending counseling sessions. Seated in the neutral territory of the therapist's office, they slowly began to peel back the layers of their discontent. The sessions were often tense, filled with painful admissions and bitter truths. Yet, each session ended with a small step towards understanding, not just of each other, but of themselves. Thaddeus learned about the loneliness Zephyrin had felt in their marriage, a loneliness that had made her vulnerable to Mark's attention. He heard her speak of her needs and desires, things he had been too preoccupied to notice. Listening to her, he realized how far he had strayed from being the partner she needed. Zephyrin, in turn, heard about Thaddeus's sense of inadequacy, how he had felt overshadowed by her larger-than-life personality. She learned of his struggles to communicate his feelings, leading to a chasm of misunderstanding between them. Through these sessions, they also confronted the reality of their affairs. Thaddeus expressed his remorse for involving Azalea, acknowledging the unfairness of using her as a pawn in his hurt. Azalea, feeling betrayed and used, had distanced herself, leaving Thaddeus to grapple with the consequences of his actions. For Zephyrin, the affair with Mark, now ended, served as a painful reflection of her unaddressed unhappiness. She realized it had been a misguided search for something that was missing in her life, something she hadn't been able to articulate until now. As they continued their therapy, a transformation began to take place. The raw wounds of their betrayals slowly started to heal, giving way to a cautious understanding. They began to communicate more openly, sharing their thoughts and feelings with a vulnerability they had never allowed before. The journey was far from easy. There were setbacks and days when the hurt seemed too deep to ever fully heal. Yet, with each session, with each honest conversation, they found themselves shedding the layers of resentment and misunderstanding that had shrouded their relationship for years. In this newfound space of openness, Thaddeus and Zephyrin began to rediscover each other. They started to see the person they had fallen in love with, the person who had been obscured by the tumult of unspoken grievances and neglected needs. As they navigated this complex path of healing and understanding, they realized that their marriage, though deeply scarred, still held a glimmer of hope. A hope that perhaps, from the ashes of their broken past, they could build something new and stronger. As autumn turned to winter, bringing with it a chill that seeped into the bones, Thaddeus and Zephyrin found themselves at a crossroads. The weeks of counseling and heart-to-heart conversations had laid bare the truths of their marriage. They had journeyed through the storm of their emotions, from the tumultuous waves of anger and betrayal to the calmer seas of understanding and forgiveness. Yet, even as they navigated these waters, a fundamental question remained unanswered: could their marriage survive? One evening, as they sat in their living room, the silence between them was not oppressive as it had once been, but rather contemplative. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, its lights twinkling softly, a stark contrast to the previous year's celebration that had set their current predicament in motion. Zephyrin, Thaddeus began, his voice hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through." Zephyrin nodded, her eyes meeting his. There was a weariness in them, a fatigue born of emotional turmoil. "I have too, Thaddeus. It feels like we've been on this endless journey." Thaddeus took a deep breath, the words he had been rehearsing in his mind suddenly difficult to articulate. "I believe we've tried our best. We've delved into the depths of our marriage, confronted our demons. But I can't help feeling that maybe our paths have diverged too far to ever truly converge again." Zephyrin's expression didn't change, but he saw the slight tightening of her lips, the only sign of her internal struggle. "I've felt it too," she admitted softly. "We've grown, both of us, but perhaps not together. Maybe we've grown apart instead." The acknowledgement hung in the air, a painful truth they had both skirted around. Thaddeus felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that they were finally voicing these thoughts, and sorrow for the end it signified. "Do you think?" Zephyrin's voice faltered, "Do you think it's time for us to let go?" The question, though expected, hit Thaddeus with a force he hadn't anticipated. Letting go meant the end of their shared dreams, their plans, their life together. Yet, clinging to a relationship that had lost its essence seemed a disservice to the love they once shared. "I think so," Thaddeus replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think it's time for us to step forward, separately. To find our happiness, not as a couple, but as individuals." Tears brimmed in Zephyrin's eyes, and this time, Thaddeus reached out to hold her hand. It was a gesture of comfort, of shared sorrow, and of gratitude for the years they had spent together. In the weeks that followed, they navigated the process of divorce with a mutual respect that had been rekindled through their counseling sessions. It was an amicable separation, devoid of the bitterness that had initially fueled their actions. As Thaddeus packed his belongings, he felt a sense of melancholy. This was not the outcome he had envisioned on his wedding day, but life, he had learned, was unpredictable and often led down paths one never intended to take. Standing at the threshold of their once shared home, Thaddeus and Zephyrine shared a final embrace. It was a goodbye to their marriage, but also an acknowledgement of the growth and understanding they had gained. "Goodbye, Zephyrine," Thaddeus said, a lump forming in his throat. "Goodbye, Thaddeus." "Be happy," she replied, her voice laced with a sad resolve. With a final glance at the home that had housed their joys and sorrows, Thaddeus stepped out into the cold winter air. The chapter of Thaddeus and Zephyrine had closed, but the story of their individual journeys was just beginning.
The rays of the morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. Emma's alarm clock buzzed insistently, prompting her to stretch and let out a yawn as she embraced the start of a new day. Her routine was a carefully choreographed dance, one that she had perfected over the years. She sat up and glanced at the empty space beside her. Noah, her husband, had already left for work. His job at a tech startup often required him to leave at the crack of dawn. Emma swung her legs off the bed and padded softly across the room to wake her children. First, she opened the door to her son's room. Liam, a spirited 6-year-old with an insatiable curiosity, was already awake. His room was adorned with posters of space shuttles and astronauts, signifying his fascination with the cosmos. Liam sat on the floor, engrossed in assembling a Lego rocket ship. "Good morning, my little astronaut," Emma greeted him warmly, ruffling his tousled hair. Liam's face lit up as he showed her his latest creation. "Look, Mom! This one is going to Mars!" Emma smiled, admiring his enthusiasm. Next, she walked to her daughter's room. Olivia, 2 years older than Liam, was still in bed, her chest rising and falling rhythmically in the throes of a peaceful slumber. Her room was a stark contrast to Liam's, adorned with pastel hues and a collection of dolls neatly arranged on a shelf. Emma gently nudged Olivia awake, and the sleepy-eyed girl stretched languidly before getting up. The morning routine at the Johnson household was a well-oiled machine. Emma prepared breakfast while Liam and Olivia got ready for school. The kitchen was filled with the comforting aroma of pancakes and freshly brewed coffee. Emma deftly flipped pancakes, poured milk into cereal bowls, and ensured that the lunchboxes were packed with nutritious treats. As Emma bustled around the kitchen, she couldn't help but ponder the rhythm of her life. She had met Noah during her college days, and their love story had been nothing short of a fairy tale. He was charming, intelligent, and ambitious, while she was nurturing, creative, and grounded. They had built a life together, one that was filled with laughter, shared dreams, and a couple of delightful kids. Emma was a freelance writer, crafting articles and stories from the cozy nook of her living room. She had always been passionate about storytelling, and her flexible work schedule allowed her to balance her career and family life seamlessly. Every day, after sending Liam and Olivia off to school, she would settle down with her laptop and a cup of coffee, weaving words into narratives that resonated with her readers. Noah's job, on the other hand, was demanding. He worked long hours, developing software solutions for a startup that was steadily gaining recognition in the tech world. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time for family dinners and weekend outings. Their life was a delicate balance of work, family, and love. As Emma waved goodbye to Liam and Olivia, who boarded the school bus with cheerful giggles, she felt a sense of contentment. She returned to the tranquility of her apartment, ready to immerse herself in her writing. The sound of her fingers tapping on the keyboard blended harmoniously with the distant hum of the city outside. Yet, amidst the routine, there was an undercurrent of anticipation. Emma and Noah had plans for the future. They dreamt of buying a house in the suburbs, complete with a backyard for Liam and Olivia to play in. They talked about vacations, exploring new places, and creating memories that would last a lifetime. Emma's phone buzzed, interrupting her train of thought. It was a text from Noah. "Good morning, love. Have a great day." She smiled, typing a quick reply before diving back into her work. The simplicity and predictability of her routine were comforting. She reveled in the knowledge that she had a loving family and a fulfilling career. As the morning unfolded, Emma lost herself in the world of words, blissfully unaware that the routine she held so dear was on the cusp of unraveling. For now, she was cocooned in the warmth of her family's love and the familiarity of her daily life. Little did she know, the threads of her carefully woven tapestry were about to be tugged, unraveled, and reassembled into a pattern she could never have anticipated. Emma's day progressed in its usual cadence. The hum of her laptop and the rhythmic tapping of keys were a symphony that played in the background as she poured her creativity onto the digital canvas. The morning turned into afternoon, and soon it was time to prepare for Liam and Olivia's return from school. As Emma tidied up her workspace and prepared snacks for the children, she noticed an envelope lying on the doormat. It was an unusual sight. Most of their correspondence was digital, and physical mail was a rarity. Curiosity piqued, she picked up the envelope. It was made of high-quality parchment, sealed with a wax emblem she didn't recognize. There was no return address, only her name elegantly handwritten on the front. She opened the envelope carefully, not wanting to damage the seal. Inside was a letter, written in the same elegant script. Emma sat down and began to read. Dear Emma, I hope this letter finds you in good health and high spirits. I am reaching out to you under circumstances most unusual and extraordinary. My name is Eleanor Montgomery, and I am an attorney based in New York City. I represent the estate of a certain late Mrs. Abigail Williams. Mrs. Williams, a woman of considerable wealth and stature, passed away recently. In her last will and testament, she has named you as a beneficiary. I understand that this might come as a surprise to you, and you might be wondering about the connection between you and Mrs. Williams. Given the sensitive nature of the matter, I would like to arrange a meeting to discuss this in person. I will be in your city next week and would be grateful if you could spare some time to meet me. Please find my contact details below. Looking forward to your prompt response. Yours sincerely, Eleanor Montgomery. Emma read the letter thrice, each time feeling a mix of surprise and confusion. She had never heard of Abigail Williams, and the idea of being named in the will of a stranger was bewildering. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this woman, and why would she leave anything to Emma? She checked the clock and realized it was almost time for the children to return. Pushing the letter aside for the moment, she quickly prepared sandwiches and set the table. The bus arrived, and Liam and Olivia bounded into the apartment, their faces flushed with the excitement of the day. As they sat down to eat, Emma's mind kept drifting back to the mysterious letter. She decided to share the news with Noah first before taking any action. The afternoon passed in a blur, and soon it was time for Noah to return home. When Noah walked through the door, tired but smiling, Emma could barely contain her impatience. After dinner, when the children were settled in front of the TV, she pulled Noah aside and showed him the letter. Noah read it with furrowed brows, his expression mirroring Emma's confusion. "This is unexpected," he said, handing the letter back to her. "Do you have any idea who this Abigail Williams could be?" Emma shook her head, her face a canvas of perplexity. "I've never heard of her, and I have no idea why she would name me in her will. It doesn't make any sense." Noah pondered for a moment, then suggested, "Maybe you should meet this attorney, Eleanor Montgomery. It could be a mix-up, or maybe there's more to the story that we don't know. Either way, we won't find out until you meet her." Emma agreed, albeit with a sense of trepidation. The next day, she called Eleanor and scheduled a meeting for the following week. The days leading up to the meeting were filled with anticipation and a myriad of questions. Emma tried to focus on her work and family, but the enigma of the letter loomed large in her thoughts. As the day of the meeting approached, Emma couldn't shake off a sense of foreboding. She couldn't fathom how her ordinary, routine life had suddenly taken such an extraordinary turn. Little did she know that this mysterious letter was just the beginning, and her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Unbeknownst to Emma, the tapestry of her life was about to gain new colors, patterns, and textures. The ordinary was set to become extraordinary, and the familiar was about to be replaced with the fantastic. Emma was on the brink of a journey that would challenge her, change her, and ultimately redefine her understanding of family, legacy, and destiny. The morning of the meeting arrived with a sky painted in hues of soft pinks and oranges. Emma, though accustomed to early starts, found herself unusually restless. She chose her outfit meticulously, opting for a comfortable yet professional ensemble. After ensuring that Liam and Olivia were ready for school and leaving them in Noah's care, she made her way to the cafe where she was to meet Eleanor Montgomery. The cafe was a quaint establishment, adorned with vintage decor and bathed in the warm glow of antique lamps. Emma arrived early and chose a quiet corner. She ordered a cup of coffee and tried to calm her racing thoughts. As the minutes ticked by, the door chimed, and a woman walked in, exuding an air of grace and confidence. Eleanor Montgomery was a tall, elegant woman in her 50s, with silver streaks gracefully adorning her well-coiffed hair. She spotted Emma and walked over with an extended hand and a warm smile. "Mrs. Thompson?" Eleanor inquired, and upon Emma's nod, she continued, "I'm Eleanor Montgomery. Thank you for meeting me." The initial pleasantries gave way to a conversation that would unravel the first threads of a mystery that spanned decades. Eleanor began to share the story of Abigail Williams, a woman whose life was both extraordinary and enigmatic. Abigail, Eleanor explained, was born into wealth and privilege. She was an only child, and her parents were philanthropists and patrons of the arts. Abigail grew up surrounded by luxury but was also instilled with a sense of responsibility towards those less fortunate. She studied art history and traveled the world, collecting artifacts and contributing to various charitable causes. Eleanor paused to gauge Emma's reaction and then continued. Abigail had been married briefly in her youth, but the union ended in tragedy when her husband died in a car accident. They had no children, and Abigail never remarried. Instead, she poured her energies into her philanthropic work and her passion for art. In her later years, Abigail became somewhat of a recluse. She lived in a grand estate filled with art and antiquities, surrounded by lush gardens that she meticulously maintained. Eleanor described the estate with such vivid detail that Emma could almost picture herself walking through the ornate rooms and manicured lawns. Eleanor then presented Emma with a photograph of Abigail. The image depicted a woman of undeniable grace, with a striking resemblance to Emma. The similarities were uncanny, from the curve of their smiles to the intensity of their gaze. Emma felt a strange connection to this woman she had never met, and her intrigue deepened. "Eleanor, this is all very fascinating," Emma began, her voice tinged with curiosity. "But I still don't understand why I am named in her will. I have no connection to her that I know of." Eleanor nodded, understanding Emma's perplexity. "Mrs. Thompson, Abigail was a meticulous woman. Towards the end of her life, she became interested in genealogy and started tracing her family roots. It was during this research that she came across your name. It appears that you are a distant relative of hers." Emma was taken aback. A distant relative? The revelation was unexpected, and she tried to make sense of this newfound connection. Eleanor continued, "Abigail had no immediate family, and upon discovering her ties to you, she decided to leave a part of her estate to you. She believed in passing on her legacy to someone who shared her bloodline." Emma sat there, stunned, trying to process the information. A part of her was skeptical, questioning the veracity of this sudden claim of kinship. Yet another part of her was intrigued by the mysterious connection and the unexpected inheritance. Eleanor handed Emma a set of documents, legalities detailing the inheritance, and the steps required to claim it. She explained that a part of the estate included the grand mansion, a substantial sum of money, and an extensive art collection. As the meeting concluded, Emma stepped out of the cafe, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The city around her seemed to fade into the background as she tried to comprehend the enormity of the situation. The revelation opened a door to a past Emma knew nothing about, and she couldn't help but wonder what secrets lay hidden in the tapestry of her lineage. With a mix of apprehension and excitement, she realized that she was about to embark on a journey that would unearth secrets, challenge her beliefs, and alter the course of her life forever. Unbeknownst to Emma, the legacy left behind by Abigail was more than just material possessions. It was a key to a past waiting to be discovered, a story waiting to be told, and a destiny waiting to be embraced. The threads of fate had intertwined, and Emma was about to walk a path that would lead her to discoveries beyond her wildest imagination. Emma spent the following days meticulously sifting through the documents Eleanor had handed her. Amidst the legal jargon and formalities, she found herself immersed in a world of intrigue that had been silently unfolding across generations. With each passing day, the connection between Emma and Abigail became more apparent. The documents included old letters, photographs, and diary entries that painted a picture of a life lived with passion and purpose. Emma was drawn to Abigail's diary, where the words seemed to leap off the pages, revealing a woman whose spirit resonated with her own. Abigail wrote about her travels, her love for art, and the solitude that often accompanied her philanthropic pursuits. The diary held secrets, thoughts, and reflections that spanned decades. One evening, after putting Liam and Olivia to bed, Emma settled into her reading nook, the diary in her hands. Noah, ever supportive, brewed a pot of tea and joined her, equally eager to uncover the mysteries of the past. As Emma turned the pages, she stumbled upon an entry that caught her attention. It was an account of a summer Abigail had spent in a quaint village in France. She wrote about a local artist she had met, a young man with a passion for painting landscapes. The entry was filled with descriptions of sunlit afternoons and picturesque scenery, and it was evident that Abigail held a special fondness for this chapter of her life. As Emma read aloud, she found a small, carefully folded letter tucked between the pages. The letter was addressed to Abigail from the French artist, expressing his gratitude for her support and friendship. The artist spoke of a painting he had created, inspired by their time together, and had gifted it to Abigail as a token of appreciation. Emma's curiosity was piqued. She wondered if the painting was part of the inheritance. The thought of owning a piece of art that held such sentimental value was thrilling. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. Emma, along with Noah, decided to visit the grand estate that once belonged to Abigail. The mansion, nestled amidst sprawling gardens, was a testament to a bygone era. The rooms were adorned with exquisite art, antique furniture, and countless artifacts that Abigail had collected over the years. As they explored the mansion, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. She could sense Abigail's presence in every nook and corner, from the elegantly arranged drawing room to the serene solitude of the library. Emma and Noah spent hours exploring the art collection. Each piece had a story, a memory etched in time. And then, in a secluded room filled with canvases and sculptures, Emma's eyes fell upon a mesmerizing landscape painting. The artwork depicted a serene French village bathed in the golden glow of sunset, with hues of amber, crimson, and azure blending seamlessly on the canvas. Emma knew instantly that this was the painting mentioned in the letter. The realization was profound, and she felt an inexplicable connection to the piece. It was as if the artist had captured not just a moment in time, but also a fragment of Abigail's soul. As days turned into weeks, Emma delved deeper into Abigail's world. She learned about her philanthropic endeavors, her advocacy for the arts, and her unwavering commitment to making a difference. Emma discovered letters and correspondences that spoke of Abigail's efforts to support budding artists, fund educational initiatives, and contribute to charitable causes. Amidst the artifacts and heirlooms, Emma found herself reflecting on her own journey. The legacy that Abigail had left behind was not just material wealth, but a calling to continue her work. Emma realized that she had been given an opportunity to make a difference, to contribute to a cause larger than herself. Emma's conversations with Eleanor grew frequent and insightful. Eleanor shared stories of Abigail's dedication and her desire to leave a lasting impact. It became clear that Abigail had seen potential in Emma, recognizing a kindred spirit who could carry forward her legacy. As Emma walked through the gardens one crisp morning, the estate seemed to whisper secrets of the past. She could envision Abigail strolling through the same paths, lost in thought, planning her next endeavor. The journey of unraveling the past had brought Emma face to face with her own potential. The legacy was not just an inheritance but a responsibility, a calling that echoed through time. Emma knew that she had a decision to make. The estate, the art collection, and the substantial funds were tools that she could use to make a difference. Inspired by Abigail's journey, Emma began to contemplate how she could use this unexpected legacy to create a lasting impact. With Noah by her side, and her children as her motivation, Emma stood at the crossroads of destiny. The chapters of the past had set the stage, and it was now her turn to write the future. The legacy of Abigail Williams was about to find new life, and Emma was ready to embrace the challenge. The grand estate, once echoing with the solitary footsteps of Abigail Williams, now hummed with renewed energy and purpose. Emma was determined to transform the mansion into a haven for artists, scholars, and dreamers, much like Abigail had envisioned. The idea blossomed in her mind like a vivid painting, a retreat where creativity would be nurtured, education valued, and dreams given wings. Emma named it the Williams Sanctuary, in honor of Abigail, a tribute to her legacy and the enduring spirit of benevolence. Emma's days were filled with fervor as she set about realizing her vision. She enlisted the help of architects, historians, and educators to ensure that the sanctuary would be a harmonious blend of the old and the new. Each room was carefully restored, preserving its historical charm while infusing it with modern amenities. Noah, ever the supportive partner, took charge of transforming the sprawling gardens into a therapeutic oasis. He envisioned spaces for meditation, outdoor art installations, and walking trails lined with blossoming flowers. His architectural background proved invaluable, and together with Emma, they breathed life into the estate. Emma's fervor was contagious, and soon the local community rallied around her endeavor. The once secluded mansion opened its doors to artisans, educators, and volunteers eager to contribute to the sanctuary. One of the first initiatives launched at the Williams Sanctuary was an art residency program. Artists from diverse backgrounds were invited to live and create within the inspiring confines of the estate. Emma ensured that the program was inclusive, offering scholarships to talented individuals who lacked financial means. The residency program was a resounding success. The estate buzzed with creativity as painters, sculptors, writers, and musicians found solace and inspiration in the sanctuary. The once silent halls echoed with laughter, lively debates, and the melodies of impromptu musical performances. Liam and Olivia, Emma's children, reveled in the transformation. The mansion, with its secret passages and endless rooms, became a playground for imagination. They interacted with artists, learned about different cultures, and developed a keen appreciation for the arts. One day, a renowned historian named Professor James Thompson visited the Williams Sanctuary. Intrigued by Emma's project, he offered to help catalog and research the vast collection of artifacts and documents that Abigail had amassed. Emma welcomed the opportunity, recognizing the importance of preserving the historical context of the legacy she had inherited. Professor Thompson's research unearthed fascinating aspects of Abigail's life. He discovered correspondences that highlighted her involvement in social reforms and her advocacy for education. Emma was captivated by the stories that seemed to bring Abigail to life, adding depth to her understanding of the remarkable woman. The sanctuary also became a hub for educational initiatives. Emma established scholarships and outreach programs aimed at supporting underprivileged students. Workshops, seminars, and cultural exchange programs became a staple at the estate, fostering a sense of community and shared aspirations. One particular initiative close to Emma's heart was an art therapy program designed for children and adults experiencing trauma or mental health challenges. Emma worked closely with therapists and artists to create a safe and nurturing environment where individuals could explore self-expression and healing through art. As word spread about the Williams Sanctuary, it garnered attention and support from philanthropists and organizations. Emma was approached by Clara Rodriguez, a dynamic entrepreneur with a passion for social impact. Clara was impressed by Emma's vision and proposed a collaboration to expand the sanctuary's reach and impact. Together, Emma and Clara conceptualized programs that extended beyond the boundaries of the estate. They initiated mobile art workshops, bringing creativity and education to remote communities. They championed causes such as literacy, women's empowerment, and environmental conservation, all under the umbrella of the Williams Sanctuary. Emma's life was a whirlwind of activity, but she found immense joy and fulfillment in her work. The legacy that Abigail had left behind had become a catalyst for positive change, touching countless lives and creating ripples of impact. One evening, as the sun cast a golden glow over the sanctuary, Emma stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens. She could hear the distant laughter of artists, the strumming of a guitar, and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. She thought about Abigail, the woman whose legacy had brought her to this moment. Emma felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and responsibility. The journey had been transformative, not just for her but for everyone connected to the sanctuary. As the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Emma made a silent promise to Abigail and to herself. The legacy would continue to evolve, grow, and inspire. The Williams Sanctuary was not just a testament to the past but a beacon of hope for the future. Emma knew that the chapters yet to be written were filled with endless possibilities. The legacy was alive, and she was ready to steer it towards new horizons. The Williams Sanctuary, under Emma's leadership, had grown into a flourishing haven of creativity and learning. But as with any ambitious endeavor, it was not without its challenges. The first obstacle came in the form of bureaucratic hurdles. The local authorities expressed concerns about the rapid expansion of the sanctuary and raised questions about zoning regulations and permits. Emma, determined to safeguard her vision, navigated the complexities of legalities with grace and resilience. She engaged lawyers, presented her case, and worked diligently to ensure that the sanctuary complied with all regulations. Simultaneously, a storm was brewing on the horizon. News arrived that a large corporation was eyeing the land adjacent to the sanctuary for a commercial development project. The proposed construction threatened to disrupt the serenity and ecological balance of the area. Emma, undeterred, rallied the community and led a campaign to preserve the sanctity of the sanctuary and its surroundings. She organized town hall meetings, gathered signatures for petitions, and engaged in dialogue with the corporation's representatives. Her efforts were driven by a fervent belief in the sanctuary's mission and the need to protect its environment. Noah stood by Emma, using his architectural expertise to propose alternative solutions that would allow for development without compromising the sanctuary's ethos. Together, they presented a compelling case that eventually led to a compromise. The corporation agreed to modify their plans, ensuring that the sanctuary and its surroundings remained undisturbed. Amidst these external challenges, the sanctuary itself was evolving. The artists and scholars who called it home were producing remarkable work, gaining recognition and accolades. Exhibitions were held, showcasing the diverse talents nurtured within the sanctuary's walls. Visitors marveled at the artistry on display, and the Williams Sanctuary gained a reputation as a cradle of creativity. Emma's children, Liam and Olivia, were growing up amidst this vibrant environment. Olivia developed a keen interest in painting, often spending hours in the art studios, learning from the resident artists. Liam, on the other hand, was fascinated by the natural world. He explored the gardens and woods, cataloging plants and wildlife with an enthusiasm that mirrored Abigail's own passion for nature. One day, an unexpected visitor arrived at the sanctuary. An elderly woman named Eleanor, claiming to be a distant relative of Abigail Williams, sought to learn more about her heritage. Eleanor was a historian and had spent years tracing her family tree, leading her to the sanctuary. Emma welcomed Eleanor warmly, eager to share the legacy that Abigail had left behind. Eleanor was moved to see the transformation of the estate and the positive impact it had on so many lives. She shared stories of her own research, providing Emma with a deeper understanding of Abigail's lineage and connections. The encounter with Eleanor was serendipitous. It turned out that she had valuable insights into sustainable practices and conservation, which aligned perfectly with the sanctuary's ethos. Eleanor became a frequent visitor, contributing to the sanctuary's initiatives and enriching its tapestry of knowledge and experience. As the sanctuary continued to thrive, Emma faced personal challenges as well. Balancing the demands of managing the estate, raising her children, and navigating the various obstacles was no small feat. She often found herself stretched thin, grappling with the enormity of her responsibilities. Noah, ever the pillar of support, encouraged Emma to prioritize self-care. He reminded her that the sanctuary was a collective effort, and she need not shoulder the burden alone. Emma took his advice to heart, learning to delegate tasks and lean on the community she had built. One of the most heartwarming moments came when the sanctuary hosted a grand celebration to mark its 5th anniversary. The estate was alive with festivities, as artists, scholars, community members, and supporters gathered to commemorate the journey. Emma stood before the crowd, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She spoke eloquently about the sanctuary's journey, acknowledging the challenges and triumphs. She paid homage to Abigail Williams, whose legacy had sown the seeds for this incredible community. The celebration was a testament to the sanctuary's resilience and the power of collective effort. Artists showcased their work, musicians filled the air with melodies, and laughter echoed through the halls. As the night drew to a close, Emma stood with Noah, Liam, and Olivia, looking out over the sanctuary that had become a second home to so many. The journey had been arduous, but the rewards were immeasurable. Emma knew that the road ahead would bring its own set of challenges, but she was ready to face them head-on. The sanctuary was not just a place, it was a living, breathing testament to the enduring spirit of creativity, compassion, and community. In that moment, under the starlit sky, Emma made a silent vow to continue nurturing and protecting this sanctuary, ensuring that Abigail's legacy would continue to thrive and inspire generations to come. The years passed swiftly, and the Williams Sanctuary continued to thrive under Emma's thoughtful stewardship. The sanctuary had become a haven for artists, scholars, and nature enthusiasts, each contributing to the rich tapestry of creativity and knowledge that defined the estate. Emma, now seasoned in her role, navigated the challenges of leadership with grace and resilience. She had transformed the sanctuary into a hub of sustainable living, educational initiatives, and artistic endeavors. The sanctuary's reputation had grown beyond the local community, drawing visitors and collaborators from across the country. Liam and Olivia, now young adults, had blossomed into passionate individuals. Liam had pursued studies in environmental science and conservation, inspired by his childhood spent exploring the sanctuary's gardens and woods. He worked closely with organizations focused on sustainable practices, bringing innovative ideas to the sanctuary. Olivia, on the other hand, had developed into a talented artist. Her paintings, inspired by the sanctuary's vibrant surroundings, were celebrated for their depth and emotion. She had become an integral part of the sanctuary's artistic community, often organizing workshops and exhibitions. Emma and Noah's partnership had grown stronger over the years. Noah's architectural expertise had been instrumental in ensuring that the sanctuary's expansion was harmonious with its environment. Together, they had successfully navigated challenges and celebrated triumphs, their shared vision for the sanctuary unwavering. One sunny day, as the sanctuary prepared for its annual celebration, Emma received a letter that would set the stage for the next chapter in the sanctuary's journey. The letter was from a renowned environmental organization, expressing interest in collaborating with the Williams Sanctuary to establish a research and education center focused on sustainability and conservation. Emma was elated at the prospect. The collaboration would bring new opportunities, resources, and recognition to the sanctuary. It would also align seamlessly with the sanctuary's mission and ethos. As preparations for the celebration were underway, Emma gathered the community to share the exciting news. The announcement was met with enthusiasm and applause. The sanctuary was on the cusp of a new era, and the sense of anticipation was palpable. The annual celebration was a grand affair, with artists, scholars, and community members coming together to revel in the sanctuary's achievements. The estate was adorned with art installations, vibrant flowers, and lively music. Visitors marveled at the sanctuary's evolution and the sense of unity and purpose that permeated the air. During the celebration, Emma took a moment to reflect on the journey. She thought of Abigail Williams, whose legacy had laid the foundation for this thriving community. She thought of her own journey, from a young woman seeking purpose to a leader who had nurtured and grown a sanctuary that touched countless lives. As night fell, Emma addressed the gathering, her voice resonating with gratitude and hope. She spoke of the sanctuary's humble beginnings, its challenges, and its triumphs. She shared the news of the upcoming collaboration and the promising horizons that lay ahead. The announcement was met with cheers and applause. The sanctuary, which had once been a mere vision, had grown into a beacon of creativity, learning, and sustainability. Emma's speech was followed by performances, laughter, and shared stories. The sanctuary echoed with the sounds of a community united by a shared vision and a sense of belonging. In the days that followed, Emma, Noah, Liam, and Olivia worked tirelessly to facilitate the collaboration. Plans were drawn up for the Research and Education Center, which would focus on innovative, sustainable practices and conservation efforts. The collaboration brought fresh energy to the sanctuary. Scholars and researchers arrived, eager to contribute to the sanctuary's mission. Workshops, seminars, and research initiatives were launched, each contributing to the sanctuary's growing legacy. Emma, watching the sanctuary evolve, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The sanctuary had become a living testament to the power of dreams, perseverance, and community. As Emma walked through the gardens one evening, she paused to take in the beauty around her. The sounds of laughter and lively discussions filled the air. The aroma of blooming flowers and the sight of artists immersed in their creations brought a sense of peace and contentment. Emma knew that the sanctuary would continue to grow and evolve, facing new challenges and embracing new opportunities. She felt confident that the sanctuary was in capable hands, with Liam and Olivia embodying the values and vision that had defined the sanctuary's journey. In that tranquil moment, Emma realized that the Williams Sanctuary had become more than just a place, it had become a legacy. A legacy of creativity, compassion, learning, and sustainability. A legacy that would continue to inspire and nurture generations to come. With a heart full of gratitude, Emma looked towards the horizon, ready to embrace the future with open arms and a steadfast spirit. The sanctuary, a testament to dreams realized and communities united, stood as a beacon of hope and promise, its journey continuing towards ever-expanding horizons.
The mother traded her 2 daughters for a lover and left them with a neighbor. Feeling a mix of hope and heartache and wondering if she has just turned her world upside down. In the stillness of the early morning, she sat by the window, her gaze lost in the hues of the breaking dawn. The apartment was filled with the unfamiliar sounds of a new life, a life she had chosen, a life with him. But in the quiet of these moments, her mind wandered back to them, her daughters, left behind in the wake of her pursuit of happiness. Her thoughts were a tangle of guilt and longing. Each sunrise brought a reminder of their smiles, their tears, their small hands clasping hers. She remembered the way they would run to her after a long day, their stories and laughter filling the room. Now, the silence was overwhelming. She had left seeking a love that was different, perhaps more consuming, but the price of this new beginning was steep. A choice made for her own happiness, yet it felt like a betrayal. Miles away, in a modest, familiar house, 2 young girls faced the day with a heaviness in their hearts. Their mother's departure had left a void, one that the kind neighbor, Mr. Henderson, tried earnestly to fill. He had stepped in as a guardian, a role he accepted with a mix of concern and awkwardness. He made pancakes for breakfast, attempting to replicate their mother's recipe, but the taste wasn't quite right. His efforts to engage them in conversation over dinner were met with polite responses, but the warmth and ease they once felt were missing. The older sister, more acutely aware of the change, would often retreat into silence, her eyes betraying a mix of resentment and sadness. The younger one, still hopeful, would sometimes ask when Mommy was coming back, a question that lingered in the air unanswered. School had become a refuge and a reminder of their altered reality. Friends asked questions they couldn't answer, teachers showed concern they couldn't fully appreciate. The world moved on around them, but they felt stuck, caught in a limbo of before and after. The contrast between their lives was stark. One, a mother grappling with the consequences of her choices, seeking fulfillment but haunted by regret. The other, two daughters adapting to a life turned upside down, finding solace in the familiarity of their home but feeling the absence of the one who had made it complete. Their paths had diverged, yet they remained connected by the invisible threads of family, love, and memories. The journey ahead was uncertain, each day a step towards understanding and perhaps, in time, a path back to each other. As the days turned into weeks, the novelty of her new life began to dull. She found herself caught in a relentless cycle of reminiscence and regret. Her lover, once a beacon of hope and excitement, now seemed like just another person sharing her space, oblivious to the turmoil within her. Nights were the hardest. Lying awake, she would think of her daughters, picturing them in their beds, in the home she had left behind. Her heart ached with a maternal longing she couldn't quench. She began to question the choices that led her here. Was the pursuit of personal happiness worth the cost? Meanwhile, her daughters were fighting their own battles. The older one, now more withdrawn, struggled to keep up with her schoolwork. Her grades, once a source of pride, had started to slip. She found it hard to focus, her mind constantly wandering to the void left by their mother. The younger sister tried to remain cheerful, but the strain was evident. She clung to Mr. Henderson, seeking in him the comfort she once found in her mother. But despite his best efforts, he could not fully bridge the gap. He watched them with a growing sense of helplessness, wishing he could do more. At school, the girls faced whispers and sideways glances. Their classmates, aware of their situation, oscillated between curiosity and pity. The sisters felt increasingly isolated, a sense of being different, marked by their mother's absence. One evening, as Mr. Henderson set the dinner table, he noticed the older sister's eyes brimming with tears. He hesitated, unsure of how to approach her. Finally, he gently asked if she wanted to talk about it. The floodgates opened, and she poured out her frustrations and fears, her voice laced with a mix of anger and sorrow. The younger sister, overhearing the conversation, joined in. They spoke of their mother, their confusion about why she left, and their longing for her return. Mr. Henderson listened, offering words of comfort but knowing they fell short. In her apartment, the mother penned a letter to her daughters. It was filled with apologies and explanations, but each time she read it over, it seemed inadequate. The words couldn't convey the depth of her emotions, the complexity of her choices. With a heavy heart, she tucked the letter away, unresolved. As the distance between them grew, so did their struggles. The mother grappled with her guilt and yearning, while her daughters navigated a world that felt increasingly foreign. Their lives, once intertwined, now ran on parallel tracks, each marked by a profound sense of loss. Yet, in this chasm of separation, a subtle understanding began to emerge, an understanding that the choices we make are never without consequence, and the paths we choose inevitably shape not just our lives, but the lives of those we love. The initial thrill of her new relationship had begun to fade, revealing a more complex reality. She started to see her lover not as an escape, but as another person with his own flaws and complexities. The apartment that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a cage, a constant reminder of what she had given up. Her thoughts increasingly turned to her daughters. She imagined them growing up without her, milestones missed, moments lost. The realization that she was missing these irreplaceable times filled her with a profound sense of grief. She began to question not just her decision to leave, but the very foundations of the love that had driven her to it. The man she had left everything for now seemed less like a soulmate and more like a stranger. Back in their old home, the daughters' struggles continued. The older sister's feelings of abandonment turned to resentment. She became more rebellious, pushing against the boundaries set by Mr. Henderson, testing his patience and her limits. The younger sister, meanwhile, faced her own crisis. She fell ill, a minor sickness, but enough to bring the reality of their situation into sharp focus. Mr. Henderson, despite his best efforts, was overwhelmed. He realized, with a sinking heart, that he could provide shelter and sustenance, but he could not fill the void left by their mother. The illness served as a wake-up call for the older sister. Seeing her younger sibling in distress, she began to let go of her anger, stepping up to care for her. In this role reversal, she found a semblance of purpose, a distraction from her own pain. At school, the sisters found themselves increasingly isolated. The older sister's defiance and the younger sister's vulnerability made them targets for both concern and gossip. They clung to each other, the only constant in their rapidly changing world. Meanwhile, the mother's internal conflict reached a breaking point. She began to write to her daughters, letters filled with apologies and promises, but each time, she stopped, paralyzed by the fear of their reaction. Would they understand? Could they forgive her? One night, in a moment of desperation, she called Mr. Henderson. The conversation was brief, filled with awkward pauses and unspoken questions. She asked about the girls, her voice barely a whisper. His answers were curt but kind, painting a picture of their life without her. After the call, she sat in silence, the weight of her choices heavier than ever. The man she had left for slept peacefully beside her, unaware of the storm raging in her heart. In their old home, Mr. Henderson watched the sisters sleep, their faces peaceful in the moonlight. He made a silent promise to protect them, to be there for them, no matter what. As the night deepened, the distance between them felt both vast and painfully close. Each in their own world, they were united by a shared longing, a yearning for what had been lost, and a growing understanding of the consequences of choices made and paths taken. In her new life, the mother's days were marked by a growing sense of disquiet. The man she had once viewed as her savior now seemed more like a bystander in her personal turmoil. She found herself going through the motions, her heart and mind increasingly elsewhere. Memories of her daughters haunted her, their laughter, their cries, the way they used to cling to her when they were scared or tired. The realization that she had sacrificed these precious moments for a love that now felt hollow was a bitter pill to swallow. She started to spend hours staring out the window, lost in thought, her heart heavy with regret. The need to reconnect with her daughters, to explain and perhaps to seek forgiveness, grew stronger each day. Meanwhile, the sisters were reaching their own turning point. The older sister's anger had begun to give way to a deep-seated sorrow. She missed her mother with an intensity that surprised her. Her rebellion at school and at home gradually subsided, replaced by a quiet resignation. The younger sister's illness had passed, but it left a lingering vulnerability. She became more withdrawn, her once vibrant personality dimmed by the uncertainty and instability of their situation. The bond between the sisters deepened, their shared loss a silent language only they could understand. Mr. Henderson, observing these changes, felt a growing sense of responsibility and concern. He began to reach out more, trying to bridge the gap left by their mother. He organized small outings, attempted to engage them in their hobbies, and was more attentive to their needs. But no matter how much he tried, he knew he was only a temporary fix. One day, a letter arrived for the girls. It was from their mother. With trembling hands, they opened it, their eyes scanning the words filled with love, regret, and a plea for understanding. The letter was a catalyst, bringing to the surface all the emotions they had been trying to suppress. The older sister reacted with a mix of anger and relief. She wanted to hate her mother for leaving but couldn't shake the love she still felt. The younger sister was more forgiving, her longing for their mother overriding her sense of abandonment. In her apartment, the mother waited anxiously for a response. Days turned into weeks with no word from her daughters. The silence was deafening, each day a reminder of the void she had created. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a response came. It was cautious, the words carefully chosen, but it was a start. A door opening to a conversation, to healing, perhaps even to reconciliation. As the season changed, so did their lives. The mother, now acutely aware of the cost of her choices, began to reconsider her path. The daughters, still navigating their world without her, started to open up to the possibility of her return. This chapter in their lives was marked by introspection and change, a turning point that set the stage for what was to come, a chapter of understanding, forgiveness, and the complex journey of finding their way back to each other. As autumn turned to winter, the mother's resolve to reunite with her daughters grew stronger. The realization that her pursuit of happiness had come at too high a price was now clear. The man who had once been her everything had become a symbol of what she had lost. With a heavy heart, she made the difficult decision to leave, to try and mend the broken pieces of her family. She packed her belongings, each item a reminder of the life she had tried to build, and the one she had left behind. As she closed the door to the apartment for the last time, she felt a mix of fear and hope. There was no guarantee of forgiveness, no certainty of a happy reunion, but she knew she had to try. Back in their old home, the sisters had slowly begun to adjust to the rhythm of life with Mr. Henderson. They had grown to appreciate his efforts and kindness, but the absence of their mother was always felt, an unspoken ache in their hearts. One cold evening, as they sat around the dinner table, there was a knock at the door. Mr. Henderson went to answer it, and there, standing in the chilly night air, was their mother. The girls stood frozen, a flood of emotions washing over them. The mother's eyes were filled with tears as she looked at her daughters. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I made a terrible mistake. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to come back, to tell you both how much I love you and how much I regret leaving." The older sister, her emotions a tumultuous mix, took a step forward. She had imagined this moment many times, but now that it was here, she was overwhelmed. The younger sister followed, her eyes wide and uncertain. Mr. Henderson watched quietly, understanding his role in their story was changing. He had been a guardian, a caretaker, but he knew the family needed to heal together, without him. The sisters embraced their mother, the hug tentative at first, but then tightening as years of pain and longing were released. Words were unnecessary in that moment, the embrace said everything. In the weeks that followed, the family began the slow process of rebuilding. There were difficult conversations, tears, and laughter. The mother shared her journey, her struggles, and her realization that true happiness couldn't be found at the expense of those she loved most. The sisters shared their pain, their feelings of abandonment, but also their understanding and love. Mr. Henderson remained a supportive presence, a friend to the family, but stepped back to allow them to mend their bonds. As winter gave way to spring, the family found a new normal. They were not the same people they had been before, too much had changed. But they were together, and that was a beginning. The story of their separation and reunion became a testament to the power of forgiveness, the complexity of love, and the unbreakable bond of family. In the end, they realized that while paths may diverge, the journey always leads back home, to the heart of what truly matters.